No, that will be hectic.
मेरे पास पेन ड्राइव है, तो पेन ड्राइव में वो ऑलरेडी है, तो अगर पेन ड्राइव से काम हो जाए तो इट वुड बी गुड।
पेन ड्राइव में है आपके। चलिए आप दीजिए, मैं इसको लैपटॉप में सेव कर लेता हूँ। बट आई एम नॉट द राइट पर्सन वी आर अप्रोचिंग। आई थिंक आई विल टॉक टू सर।
वीडियो कमेंट दो
मेरा से आज नहीं है कल, बट आई विल जस्ट कंफर्म।
हाँ, तो उस पर आप कर लीजिएगा।
अच्छा,
मेरी मेल तो वो डायरेक्टली मेरे पास आ जाएगा।
ठीक है,
जैसे भी हमें प्रेजेंट करना होगा।
ओके। तो मैं आपको PDF सेंड कर देती हूँ, वो स्लाइड टू स्लाइड खुल जाएगा।
हाँ हाँ,
थैंक यू सो मच।
मैं एक शेयर सोर्स सर आजाद ठीक
जाहिद भाई इनको मना कीजिए यहाँ से निकलने के लिए। इनको जो भी आ रहा है ना
इस प्रोग्राम के तहत तुमने शामिल यही कि भाई पानी और जिस पर बात नहीं जवाब उद्वा
आपके चेयर से बाहर है।
उद्वा हाँ उसको आगे कहिएगा कि वो बैठेंगे which is basically इसको बंद
इसकी भी वीडियो ले लेती हूँ। इसको ऊपर करना कैमरा चला के।
Arooj, dost आने को मीडियम परसूट
जो खड़ा है इसका रहना और छोड़ा अंदर मेरा समझा है पर्सनल है
मोबाइल
या शुड बच्चे इसी चार प्लीज़ यहाँ पे देखिए चलिए पूरी जरूरत पड़ी थी यहाँ पे अलाउ मत करो किसी को आगे
Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning to all of you. It's my privilege to invite our esteemed dignitaries to kindly take their seats on the dais. Please come, sir. I will request Professor Vohra Sahab, Professor Felicitations Sahab, Professor Tariq Islam Sahab to kindly please take their respective seats. Respected Dean, Faculty of Arts, our guest, distinguished keynote speaker, honorable dignitaries, esteemed scholars, faculty members, researchers, and dear participants. It gives me immense pleasure and honor to welcome you all on this national seminar on the theme Embracing Diversity, Interfaith Dialogue and Cultural Understanding. Today we have gathered here with a shared intellectual commitment to reflect upon one of the most significant concerns of our time: how different faiths, cultures, and traditions can coexist harmoniously in an increasingly interconnected yet complex world. Human civilization has always been characterized by diversity, the diversity of beliefs, languages, cultures, and worldviews. Yet, this diversity is not merely a challenge, it also a profound opportunity. It allows humanity to learn from one another, to broaden intellectual horizons, and to cultivate mutual respect and understanding. The philosophical traditions of the world have consistently reminded us that plurality is not a barrier to unity, but rather a path toward deeper dialogue. This two-day seminar aims to bring together scholars, researchers, and students from different disciplines and backgrounds to engage in meaningful discussions on themes related to pluralism, intercultural understanding, and peaceful coexistence. Through keynote lectures, paper presentations, and discussions, we hope to create a vibrant intellectual platform that encourages dialogue across traditions and perspectives. On behalf of the organizing committee and the Department of Philosophy, I extend a very warm welcome to our respected guest, whose gracious presence adds great significance to this event. We are equally honored to have our distinguished keynote speakers and other eminent scholars who have shared their valuable insights with us. I also extend my sincere appreciation to the participants who have traveled from different institutions to contribute their ideas and research to this seminar. I hope that the deliberations during these 2 days will not only enrich our academic understanding, but also inspire us to cultivate empathy, respect, and cooperation in our social and cultural lives. Once again, I welcome you all and wish the seminar very successful and intellectually stimulating journey. I now invite Ms. Utba Fatima, the student of B Honors, to kindly come forward and recite a few verses from the Holy Quran.
Assalamu alaikum. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
compassionate, most merciful. All praise is for Allah, Lord of all worlds, the most compassionate, most merciful, Master of the day of judgment. You alone we worship, and you alone we ask for help. Guide us along the straight path, the path of those you have blessed, not those you are displeased with, or those who are astray. Sadaqallahu al-Azim.
Thank you so much, Ulba, for this beautiful recitation. It is now our privilege to felicitate our respected guests as a token of our deep respect and gratitude for their presence at this national seminar on embracing diversity, interfaith dialogue, and cultural understanding. For the purpose, I would request Dr. Amir Riaz, the Chairperson, Department of Philosophy, to present a shawl and a memento to our keynote speaker, Professor Ashok Vora sahab. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much once again. Now I would humbly request Dr. Salman Siddiqui, Assistant Professor, Department of Philosophy, to present a shawl and a memento to our keynote speaker, Professor Tariq Islam Sahab. Thank you so much, Dr. Salman. Now I would request Dr. Bodhen Kumar Saab to present a memento to our respected Dean, Professor T.N. Satish Saab. Please come, sir. Thank you so much, Dr. Bodhen Saab. And now I would request Dr. Shahidul Haq, the coordinator, the organizing secretary of this seminar, to present a memento to our chairperson, Dr. Amir Riaz Saab. Thank you all once again. And now I would like to request Dr. Amir Riaz, the Chairperson, Department of Philosophy, to kindly come for the welcome address and the introduction of the seminar.
बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। सच कह दूं ऐ ब्राह्मण, गर तू बुरा न माने, तेरे सनम कदों के बुत हो गए पुराने। अपनों से बैर रखना तूने बुतों से सीखा, जंग व जदल सिखाया वाइस को भी खुदा ने। पत्थर की मूरतों में समझा है तू खुदा है, पत्थर की मूरतों में समझा है तू खुदा है। खाके वतन का मुझको हर जर्रा दे होता है। आ गैरियत के पर्दे एक बार फिर उठा दें, बिछड़ों को फिर मिला दें, नक्शे दुई मिटा दें। सूनी पड़ी हुई है मुद्दत से दिल की बस्ती, आ एक नया शिवाला इस देश में बना लें। Respected Professor Ashok Vora Sahab, former Dean and HOD, Delhi University, Department of Philosophy, former chairpersons, keynote speaker Professor Tariq Islam Sahab, Dean, Faculty of Arts, Professor Satishan Saab. I can see that two chairpersons from the other departments as well as from philosophy departments are here. Professor Latif Sahab, Tasadduk Sahab is here, Professor Shaina Ma'am is here, former chairperson Akil Sahab is here, the coordinator of the seminar, Dr. Salman Siddiqui, distinguished guests, respected delegates, faculty members and dear students. I welcome you all in the inaugural session of the two-day national seminar organized by the Department of Philosophy, AMU. It is a great honor for us to host this seminar and bring together such a diverse group of minds to share knowledge and ideas on a very important topic, embracing diversity, interfaith dialogue and cultural understanding. The topic is important. Professor Yusuf Amin Sahab is here. I welcome you all, you also sir in this seminar. This topic is important because it addresses one of the most fundamental realities of human life. People are different in culture, religion, language, ethnicity, gender and thought. Instead of seeing these differences as a source of conflict, the ideas encourages us to see them as a source of strength and enrichment. Topic is important because it promotes peace and harmony, encourages mutual understanding, strengthens society, reflects ethical and religious values, builds inclusive communities, prepares us for globalized world. Interfaith understanding occupies an important place in the intellectual tradition of philosophy in general and Muslim philosophy in particular, which approach the question of religious diversity through the lenses of reason, metaphysics and ethics. Rather than promoting fundamentalism, many classical Muslim thinkers developed framework that allows for dialogue, coexistence and mutual respect among followers of different religious groups. Philosophers such as Al-Farabi argued that truth is universal and accessible through both revelation and reason. In his vision of virtuosity, Al-Farabi suggested that different religious traditions may express the same ultimate truth in symbolic form suited to their communities. The Andalusian philosopher Ibn Rushd further strengthens this perspective by advocating harmony between philosophy and religion. Sir Syed Ahmad Khan strongly believed that religion shares common ethical foundations such as belief in one God, morality and human dignity. He argued that differences between religions should not lead to conflict but rather to constructive dialogue. His understanding on interfaith dialogue and cultural understanding were grounded in reason, education and shared human values. Iqbal believed that all human beings share a common spiritual origin. While religions differ in form, the essence is rooted in moral and spiritual truth. He acknowledged religious diversity as part of divine wisdom. Sufism offers an even more inclusive vision of interfaith harmony. Mystics like Jalaluddin Rumi and others emphasized love as the ultimate path to God, transcending former religious boundaries. Rumi famously held that the essence of religion lies beyond labels, inviting all, embracing diversity as part of sites, encourage thoughtful discussion and foster day and night because
advocates the religious rights of Hindus alone in the diffidence, even a sense of superiority and inferiority. For what is mine is much dearer to me than what is yours. I see non-existent good qualities in what is mine and am blind to the defects, incongruencies and shortcomings. Likewise, I am most likely to see non-existent defects in what is yours or others. Religion and turn a blind eye to what is good in it. This natural psychological commitment to and love for one's own and natural psychological disdain for all that belongs to You or other, therefore, is the root cause, though not the only cause, of division in society. It is an enemy of unity, harmony, and oneness in the social and religious fabric of a civilized society. So the notion of other is very important for all of us. The moment I consider you as the other, then there is inbuilt animosity. If not animosity, I should say indifference towards you. As opposed to other aspects of life, in the case of religious beliefs, it is natural for one to be biased towards the doctrines and practices of the religion one is born in. Over time, the prejudice towards the doctrine of the religion and their practices and predilections for even the dogmas, practices, and rituals prevalent in one's own religion become an integral part of the form of one's life. One's religion and belief are like one's skin or DNA one is born with. Besides, as Arvind Sharma, in several of his writings based on the notion of multi-religious identity prevalent in Japan, concludes that because of the principle of adherence to just one and only one of the several religions, either by birth or by choice, is implicit in this conception, in this conception of religion. In other words, it is not possible to be a follower of the religions of Judaism, Christianity, or Islam at the same time. You cannot be a Jew, you cannot be a Jew or a Muslim or in Islam or a Christianity at the same time. At different times I may be, because I am allowed to change my religion. But at the same time, at one time, I have to belong to only one of them. This sense of exclusive belonging or adherence to a single faith is a very significant definitional marker of the notion of religion. So much so that it is not just the cause of interreligious but also intra-religious conflicts. In Hinduism, this definitional marker has led to doctrinal and fierce conflicts between Shaivites and Vaishnavites. This is all recorded, which I go into a little later. Between the Shaivas and the Shaktas. In Jainism, between Digambaras and the Shwetambaras. In Buddhism, between Hinayanis and Mahayanis, and so on. Similarly, in Christianity, this has led to a violent conflicts between the Protestants and Catholics. In Islam, between Shias and Sunnis. In Judaism, between Orthodox and Conservative Judaism on the one hand, and Reform and Reconstructional Judaism on the other hand. These divisions are to be found not only in the ancient world religions, but also in the relatively newly founded religions, sects in the world's youngest religion, Sikhism, I am taking that example. Besides the three major sects, Khalsa, Namdhari, Nirankaris, there are small subsects like Radha Swamis, Neeldharis, Nirmals, Ravidasis, Udasis, Nihangs, and several other minor subsects. There are several instances of skirmishes between them. The psychological necessity of exclusive adherence to one's religion or one of its denominations leads to a sentiment of unquestioned supremacy of one's faith, which in turn generates a sense of superiority in what is mine and a feeling of inferiority towards what is not mine. So much so that one may look down upon what is not mine. Superiority, a complex so generated results in not only interreligious but also intra-religious strifes about which I have talked just a few minutes before. It is difficult, if not impossible, to escape the sense of psychological superiority and pride in what are one's ideas, doctrines, faiths, and arguments, and find fault with and reject those that belong to others. This is in distinct contrast to our approach to material goods and possessions. In the case of worldly possessions, one may envy others who have them and wish and struggle to acquire them, or even be keen on adopting or even sharing their values and lifestyle. In the case of material goods, I want to own them. On the other hand, in the case of religious beliefs, one wishes to maintain exclusivity. This is the difference between material objects and the religious or spiritual objects. On the other hand, in the case of religious beliefs, one wishes to maintain exclusivity and pity those who who do not share one's faith and religion. One may even go to the extent of converting others by persuasion, coercion, or using other means to one's faith. So there is no question of my acquiring those things, like in the case of, if I like your shirt, I would like to acquire it. But in the case of religion, no. That is what I don't do. The head of each of the religious faiths preaches about equality of all religions and upholds that the purpose of all religions is to bring the worshipper in the presence of God. Yet each of them, and it's ironical, yet each of them still considers their respective religion to do so in an easier, more effective and superior way. The Pope, the Dalai Lama, the chief rabbinate in Israel, and the Caliphate upholds that the core of each religion lies in the virtues of truthfulness, honesty, temperance, courage, happiness, and peace. And each religion teaches us the methods to practice them in our own lives. However, they hold that the technique of their own religion is far superior to those of the others. For example, the New Testament says, "For there is no other name under heaven given among human beings whereby we must be saved. Under heaven, no. In no other name is there salvation but Jesus." The first kalma in Islam says, "There is none worthy of worship except Allah, and Muhammad is the messenger of Allah." The second kalma makes the exclusivism clearer when it says, "I bear witness that there is none worthy of worship except Allah, the one alone, without his partner, without a second, and I bear witness to Muhammad as he is his servant and messenger." Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, and their subsects are replete with such statements as "O Ram, Lord of the dynasty of Raghu, thou art verily the redeemer of the fallen and the sinful." Raghu may be replaced with the chief deity of the concerned religion or its subsect. Thus begins a pull and push, a tug of war in the race of superiority between the followers of various religions and their sects and subsects. This race, with passage of time, ultimately leads to bloody religious wars, as has been said above, between Orthodox, Reform Conservative, and Reformist Jews, Catholics and Protestant Christians, Shias and Sunnis in Islam, Vaishnavites and Shaivites, Mahayanis and Hinyanis in Buddhism, and even between the peace-loving and most non-violent sects of Jainism, Digambar and Vedanta. While theosophia is induced by social conditioning, religiophobia is the innate nature of mankind. Etymologically, the term religiophobia is derived from a combination of Latin word religio, moral obligation or worship, and Greek word phobos, fear. So, religiophobia may be defined as an irrational or morbid and obsessive fear, hatred, prejudices, or intolerance towards other than one's own religion, religious faiths, religious people, or religious organizations. It represents a generalized bias against spiritual beliefs and practices held by others, which can manifest as discrimination or hostility towards specific religious traditions. For example, Islamophobia is the fear of or hatred for the followers of Islam. Christophobia is the fear of Christian and Christianity. Hinduphobia is the fear or hatred for Hindus. It is historical fact that almost every religion, every religious group exercised a kind of oppression towards the other different groups when it was in power or in position to do so. Theophobia is different from religiophobia. The former is the outcome of social interaction, while this latter innate to mankind, while the latter is innate to mankind. It is an inborn natural condition of human beings. As argued earlier, it is natural for mankind to give precedence and love to that which is theirs over that which belongs to the other. Both theophobia and religiophobia, individual and community disregard all the great achievements made by theologians and clerics in science, culture, life, literature, ethics, thought, and arts. These achievements have enriched human life with flavor and beauty, helped societies break free from slavery and injustice, and enabled the poor to produce their food and allowed the ignorant to gain knowledge. That is what science does for us. Both the religiophobia and theophobia are distinct from other religion-related anxieties like religious anxiety and spiritual anxiety. The religious anxiety or spiritual anxiety generally refer to concerns about one's relationship with a higher power, divine punishment, or commitment to moral standards. While these anxieties can be distressing, they do not always reach the level of phobia. The religiophobia is a natural condition of every human being. Can be best illustrated by taking the example of such enlightened persons as Mahatma Gandhi, the exemplar of religious tolerance and the champion promoter of harmony among world religions. He preached that a deep understanding of his religion as well as that of others makes one realize that religions are different roads converting to the same point. What does it matter that we take different roads so long as we reach the same goal? He upheld that religions are different roads so long as we reach the same goal. After critical and exhaustive study and deep reflection, Gandhi concluded: 1. That all religions are true. 2. All religions have some errors in them, but in this lived life, he too was not able to escape the emotional tendency to regard the religious practices by him as superior to others. Talking about Hinduism, Gandhi said, Hinduism to me is the most glorious religion in the world. He goes on to say, Hinduism I certainly prize above all other religions, because for the Hinduism is all suffering. Every variety of belief finds protection under its ample fold. That is to say, it is all inclusive. Talking about this preference for the Hindu religion and the scriptures over other religions, he says, I am unable to satisfy myself with Orthodox Christianity. Hinduism, as I know, it entirely satisfies my soul and fills my whole being, and I find solace in Bhagavad Gita and Upanishads that I miss even in the Sermons on the Mount. About religion one is born in or practices or one has adhered to since the birth. He asks, if I tell you to give up your religion, will you do so? And answers it by saying, never. This shows that even Gandhi, who taught that all faith constitutes a revelation of truth, but all are important, are imperfect, and liable to error, could be capable of psychological necessity and the natural psychological feeling of exclusivism and superiority for what one considers as one's own mind as opposed to that what belongs to the other. This inevitable psychological compulsion makes even such an enlightened and noble soul like him to admit, I hold my own religion, I hold for my own religion, I swear by my religion, I will die for it, I hold my religion dearer than my country, and that therefore I am a Hindu first and a nationalist after. So this is what happens when you are born in a religion. This pride in his religion was to remain with him throughout his life. He time and again asserted, I have been born a Hindu and I shall die a Hindu, a Sanatanist Hindu. If there is a salvation for me, it must be in a Hindu. Hinduism absorbs the best in other religions, and there is scope for expansion in it. That's what Gandhi said. From this, it naturally follows that Gandhi regarded Hinduism, the religion he was born in, as superior to other religions because, in his opinion, it accumulates the best in every religion and standards and abundance, all that is salute. Even in the matter of prayer, the liberal Gandhi said, my Hinduism tells me, just see, my Hinduism tells me that along with the Hindu prayer, I should also, the other prayers are there, but I should also, the word, one should mark is the word also. I should also offer the Muslim prayer and the Parsi and Christian prayers. True Hinduism lies in offering prayers of all religions because only he is good Hindu who is also a good Muslim and a good Parsi. However, he upholds that nothing elates me to so much as the music of the Gita or the Ramayana or the Tulsidasa. The only two books of Hinduism I may be said to know. I know the vice that is going on today in all the great Hindu shrines, but I love them in spite of their unspeakable feelings. If you look at the corruption that is prevalent in all the Hindu temples, he knew it, but still he believes that these defects should be overlooked and we should love the region in which we are born. Even Gandhi considers it natural for one to take pride and consider his religion in which he was born of or which he is voluntarily adopted to be superior to others and find its rituals, its teachings, its scriptures, its prophets, its founders much more profound and satisfying than all the other ones and than all others. One's religion and its rites are more profound and satisfying than all the others. One's religion and its rites and practices, however irrational they might be for an objective observer, are likely to give one more solace than those of the other religions, so much so that the practitioner of a religion in Gandhi's words admits no religion is higher than his, and the day he would think so, he would change his religion. Gandhi himself compares the reason for the attachment with the religion in which one is born and the comfort one finds in it with the love and care for his wife. He says, I can no more describe my feelings for Hinduism than for my own wife. She moves me as no other woman in the world can, nor that she has no faith faults. I dare say she has many more than I see myself, but the feeling of an indissoluble bond is there. Even so, I feel for and about Hinduism with all its faults and limitations. This indissoluble bond between oneself and the religion is the cause of deep love for one's religion. As the Christian hymn says, "Leave a love so amazing, so divine, demands my soul, my life, my all." This excessive, maddening and possessive love is the cause of one's taking pride in it and considering one's religion as superior to other religions and an exclusive repository of absolute truth. Even if one knows that his religious doctrines are contradictory, incoherent, and confusing, and that its prescribed practices are impractical and faulty to the point of being corrupt, one closes one's eyes to these shortcomings because of his blind love for the deep attachment to the religion of his birth. Instead of highlighting these shortcomings, one tries to justify the corrupt practices and theoretical inconsistencies. The evils of the prevalent caste system in Hinduism can be seen an example of this tendency. For instance, Mahatma Gandhi was fully aware of them and had a direct acquaintance with them. The evils of the caste was fully aware of them and had a direct acquaintance with the evils of the caste system in the lived life of the Hindus. Yet he tried to justify the caste system in the society. S. Radhakrishnan knew about the internal doctrinal incoherence and inconsistencies between the theories of caste, its different systems of Indian philosophy, but he defended them. He defended casteism. Just as Gandhi swears by his religion and is ready to die for it, so are those who belong to other religions. Gandhi repeatedly justifies his actions by saying, "My religion teaches me." So are those belonging to other religions justified in taking refuge from their actions under the dictates of their religion. Like Gandhi, they may also invoke religious sanctions for justification of the deeds or even misdeeds, as long as the followers of different religions are confirmed. Like Robinson Crusoe, as long as the followers of different religions are confined, like Robinson Crusoe on an island, or like a frog in the well, to their religions and practices, its dictates within the limits of their personal, private, and individual lives, there may be no conflict. Nevertheless, the moment one enters the social arena or public life, public sphere, one is bound to compare and contrast with other religions, because the practices of a religion have to be carried forward by a group or a society that has voluntarily or otherwise entered the fold. Though, now I start the fourth section of my paper. Though many scholars and reformers using the Rigveda hymn, Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vidanti, the truth is one, the learned scholars interpret it differently, argue that Hinduism is pluralistic, inclusive, and tolerant of other religions. The history of Hinduism, which is both ancient and Sanatan, that is eternal, belies this interpretation in theory and practice. Shramana tradition as the ungrateful, and they describe the Shramana tradition, their own brother, as the ungrateful, alienated children who refuse to acknowledge that they owe their parents. Shankaracharya is even more rigid and uncompromising. He accuses the Buddha of incoherent patterning, or even deliberately and hatefully leading mankind into confusion. Madhusudan Saraswati, in his commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, holds that the teaching of the materialist Buddha and others are like those of Mlechas. He does not consider them even worthy of his comments. Apan and Sambardar, the two Nyanar Shiva saints, used denigrative phrases like shameless Jain monks, naked Jains who fast by night, wicked monks who eat in barbaric way, the weak and filthy. Never use Melecha's language even at the cost of losing your life. Nathan McGovern, in his book The Snake and the Mongoose, the emergence of identity in the early Indian religion, questions the received view that the antimony for those Brahminical, without any interpretation and explanations, are placed before us as they are. They present to us picture of harmony. However, this counterpoint is inconclusive, as in my opinion, of the texts and not between the snake and the mongoose, still be more tolerant of non-Hindus. There are historical records of forcible conversion of non-Hindu places of worship into temples by the Hindus ever since the followers of non-Hindu religions settled in India. As a result, many of the places of worship of the Jains converted into Hindu temples over centuries. The record shows that since the reign of Chalukya, 11 Hindu temples have been built on Buddhist sites in the village of Machilipatnam and Nimbudiri in the Krishna district of Andhra Pradesh. Some of the prominent Hindu temples are so constructed all over India are Sri Swami Siddheshwar and Gokarneshwar temple. The list of Jain places of worship that have been converted into, and these temples are all over India. Geographically, they are spread over. The list of Jain places of worship that were converted into Hindu temples over the centuries includes various temples from all over India, and we named them, and these are from the authoritative sources. Various Christian churches in different continents of the world were taken over by the Hindu diaspora and converted into Hindu temples. In India, the example of the conversion of Christian churches into Hindu temples are Shiva temple Aligarh, Hanuman temple, Vaisnath, etc., etc. The criticism by the Hindus of the Islamic tradition seems to be unprovoked. The only critical remarks against Brahminism that I have come across are where it is said, a Brahmin, if he is not free from moral Bho is a familiar term of address in the Pali language. It is used to address inferiors and unequals, that is the Bho. There we say Shri and all that. This is the kind of language that in Pali, the people whom you like to call that are called Bho. It is used to address inferior and unequals. The Brahmins reproachfully call Buddha Bho Gautama, whereas Buddha usually addresses them as Bhante. Bhante is a respectable term for addressing a venerable. In the Jaina text, there is no narrative of an ugly encounter or mention of the usage of impolite language, words for the Hindus. The hatred for Brahminic regions is not only found in various texts of Hinduism, but their hatred for Jainism and Buddhas, and others non-Hindus is also known to be practiced in their lived life. The Sayuprayana categorically dictates that the Charvakas, Buddhists and Jainas should not be allowed to settle in a kingdom. The Buddhist work Divyadana records that Pushyamitra Sunga was a great teacher of Buddhism. He announced an award of 100 dinars for every Shrama had. Many of other literary texts portray a pejorative view of the life and teachings of Buddhas and Jainas. Kanhana's Rajtarangini, a 12th century text, is full of episodes relating to the persecution of those belonging to the two Shramanic traditions. One such narrative is about Ashoka's son, Jaluka, who was a Shaivite and who destroyed every Buddhist monastery he came across. Shashank, a contemporary of Harshvardhan, cut down the Bodhi tree in India and monasteries and killed thousands of Buddhist monks. Guye has reported that there was a fierce battle in the year 1299 between the Shaivites and Vaishnavites in Haridwar. The Naga Sadhus won in 1760. Again, the Shaivas won a battle in the same place. In the battle, about 18,000 people were killed. It is reported that this battle settled once and for all the supremacy of the Shaivites over the Vaishnavites. In the year 1707, in Ayodhya, after the death of Aurangzeb, there was another battle between the Shaiva and Sannyasins and the Vaishnava Vairagis. Many other narratives of plunder and destruction are indicative of Hinduism's hostility towards non-Hindu religions. These narratives meet the stringent requirements laid down by histories to be called historical facts. Despite all these atrocities by the Hindu kings and Brahmanas, the followers of the Shramanic traditions, religions, bore no hatred towards the offending Hindus. In fact, those belonging to Shramanic religions have granted favors, land and other monetary benefits to the Hindus and Brahmins. Arvind Sharma, in his book Religious Tolerance, a history, considers the following events as well documented and authentic historical facts. Kharavela, a Jaina king of Kalinga, in the second of 1st century BCE, granted Brahmana freedom from taxation in the 9th year of his reign. Towards the end of the 1st century BCE, Western Deccan was occupied by Shakas of the line where when their satrap Nalampa dislodged the Satvahanas from their ancestral domain. The Nasik cave in number 10 records that Usavada Vadhata, son-in-law of Mahaparna of the Kashyap of the Kayastha lineage, made large gifts to the gods of Brahmanas in the banks of sacred rivers and Bharucha, modern Bharuch, Dasapura and Govardhana, and they donated a field of fields in conjunction of Buddhist monks. There are many more such examples. It is generally argued that Hinduism is a very tolerant and inclusive religion because it assimilates into its folds the rituals, customs, and teachings of other religions and their saints. The claim is supported by quoting examples of the Vaishnavites and Vaishnavites of Rishabdeva and Buddha, whom Hindus regard as avatar, incarnation of the Supreme Lord Vishnu of the Vaishnava sect of Hinduism. Padmanabhi Jaini rebuts each of these assertions and argues that Rishabh avatar or Vishnu, he argues Vaishnavization of Jainism through the device of avatar is a fine example. About the avatar of Buddha as Vishnu, he observed that it was a way of opening or introducing Jaini rivals' fails as they were guided by nefarious intentions of the Hindu priests. One can conclude this section with the remark of Swami Vivekananda, in which, after condemning the excessive ritualism, indifference to human misery as sectarianism and casteism, he observes that no religion on earth reaches the dignity of humanity in such lofty and lofty strains as Hinduism, and no religion on earth treads upon the neck of the poor and the low in such a fashion as Hinduism. His other words, the higher Hinduism is very high, and the low of Hinduism is very low. The question about the exclusivism of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam is well settled, as each. However, the question about the exclusivism of Hinduism may not be well settled. There is no doubt that Hindutva, which is claimed to be a variant of Hinduism, is exclusive. It teaches that maxim of Hindutva, according to Savarkar, is one who wields the sword has the truth on his side. The goal of Hindutva, according to him, is not so much to gain spirituality as to reacquire territory, rehabilitate religion, preserve the Vedas and Shastras, protect cows and Brahmins, and establish suzerainty and diffusion of Hindu faith in Delhi. He argues that Hinduism is only a derivative, a fraction of part of Hindutva, and it embraces all the departments of thought and activity, the world being our Hindu race. He gave the slogan, militarize Hindudom and Hinduize politics, a slogan which appeals to so many Indians, including me, especially those who follow Rashtriya Sainik Sangh RSS ideology. The purpose of Hindutva ideology is to establish Hindutva ideology or movement is to establish a Hindu nation or a Hindu state in which there is a clear distinction between I and the other. In such a state, the boundaries between the categories of us and them, friends and foes, Hindus and Muslims, Hindus and non-Hindus, righteous and wicked, tormentors and the tormented, victors and the vanquished, oppressors and the oppressed, retribution and rewards are clearly and distinctly drawn. There is no confusion and no ambiguity in their connotation and denotation. One can say that Hindutva represents a political aspect of Hinduism. It, for political purposes, highlights social and cultural distinctions between the persons or groups and other persons and groups. The factors that make Hindutva exclusive are a common nation, a common race, and a common civilization. Hindutva doctrine completely ignores the spiritualistic social aspect of Hinduism, and still it calls itself more comprehensive than Hinduism. Shashi Tharoor has rightly pointed out in his book Why I Am Not a Hindu. Hinduism has always acknowledged the existence of opposites and reconciled them: pain and pleasure, success and failure, creation and destruction, life and death, or all manifestation of duality inherent in human existence. These pairings are not contradictory, but complementary. They are aspects of the same overreaching reality. So, also are the secular and the sacred in Hindu's life must involve both. To acknowledge this world, both absorb and reflect the unsavory aspect of the resurgence of Hindutva. More importantly, Hinduism in contemporary time is agglomerative, pluralistic, vast and open-ended, while Hindutva is monistic, narrow and close-ended. In his 2020 article, Hindutva, Hinduism and Majoritarianism, Arvind Sharma makes a distinction between the Shishta and the Lok, that is to say, the learned and the popular views uphold that a small group of scholars who represent the Shishta view, that is the learned view, may advocate the exclusivist and stand-alone doctrines, while the majoritarian part of the Hindu community, representing the Lok view, treats Hindutva as an extension of Hinduism. Those who uphold Shishta and Hindutva view of Hindutva swear by the theories, preaching and practices of inclusivist and tolerant Hinduism. They regard Hindutva as an offshoot school of Hinduism. For those who uphold the Shishta view, Hinduism comes first and Hindutva is its subset. The votaries of hardcore Hindutva call themselves nationalists. For them, Hindutva comes first and Hinduism comes later. Many of them go to the extent of saying that Hinduism is a part of Hindutva, since Hindutva is a cross-ended and leaves no scope for evolution and innovation. Most of the practicing Hindus do not, and I insist on the word do not endorse the doctrine of Hindutva and are happy with the Sanatana Dharma, inclusivism and pluralism. They regard Hinduism as an extreme case of theophobia. Let me conclude with a prayer, Ardas, sung by the Sikhs, which withdraws without any phobia, superiority or inferiority, wishes for the welfare of all sections of society without any discrimination of class, caste or profession. It summarizes the central teachings of Guru Wani, and this translation is mine. O Guru Nanak, the true emperor, bestow on us the boon of pure love and mutual understanding, of livelihood, sustenance, and daily bread. Of true and selfless love, of pure and clean pure water, and of the blessings of Guru Wani and the eternal world. Though thou give us justice to the givers of our daily bread, we surrender our mind and honor to you. Pray thou, save us all, pardon us all, save us all, forgive us all. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you so much, sir, for your insightful and thought-provoking keynote address. Your reflections have certainly enriched our understanding of the theme and will guide the deliberations of this seminar. We are now moving forward in our inaugural session with another keynote address, lecture that will further enrich the academic deliberations of this national seminar. It's my great pleasure to invite our esteemed keynote speaker, Professor Tariq Islam Sahab, a distinguished scholar in the field of Western philosophy. Professor Tariq Islam has made significant contributions to academic research and intellectual discourse, and we are indeed privileged to have such an eminent personality among us today. Professor Islam is a former professor and the chairperson, Department of Philosophy, AMU Aligarh. Professor Islam has authored and published several research papers and scholarly articles in prestigious national and international journals, contributing significantly to the field of political philosophy. Professor Islam's initial research focused on the philosophy of mind, publishing a book titled The Concept of Thinking. He later moved to political philosophy, specifically working on political Islam, its philosophy and ramifications, as well as the concept of democracy as public philosophy. His one-off research paper on Lokayat was published by the Asiatic Society, Kolkata. He presented a research paper on Gandhi Ahimsa, the principle of non-violent resistance, in the World Philosophy Congress held in Beijing, China in the year 2018. Professor Islam has been a member of Interview Committee of ICPR, the Treasurer of the Indian Philosophy Congress, and has served AMU as an elected member of Executive Council in the year 1994. He has also been the founding director of IQAC AMU Aligarh. Sir, we look forward to benefiting from your valuable insights and
passing away of Jugan Habermas, one of the leading philosopher, social critique of the 20th century. So please, 1 minute silence. Thank you very much. I don't think that sufficient can be said with regard to Julian Habermas with his contribution. He died at the age of 96. A leading contributor to social political philosophy. Zaid, Professor Latif Qasmi, Professor Zulfikar Ahmad, staff here as well. So welcome all other colleagues of the faculty, and obviously the students, the most important element. Thank you very much for coming here, and let me, I think that also sums up what we are doing here today, an encounter simultaneously, Professor Mura, an encounter simultaneously tangential, tendentious, and intangible begins to. It is culture which bears and then gives birth to religion. That is the reason why passes only then. And when does it pass? It passes when religion. Okay, and that's the reason why Kellner, a critical theorist in the Marxist tradition, pointed out that analysis of culture is intimately bound up with the study of society, politics, and economics. The implication is that culture is an outcome of tangible daily life of individuals. It is not something that comes from above or from nowhere. It is the tangible everyday life as a whole or not at all, which means an advance in production is reflected in a social fabric with the minorities demanding recognition of their rights that may be or are contrary to the rights of the dominant or majority culture. I think Professor Gora has already talked about that in terms of Hindu. The liberal democracies have been engaging for the last few decades and with how to eliminate the threat felt by the minority culture from the prevalent dominant culture. I think that exercise needs certain amount of intensification now with the kind of historical phase that India is going through. History shows that European countries were single religion countries, and their the religious education was supported by the state. All right, so the state itself was religious. Obviously, it was not a secular state as such. All right. However, with growing mobility, including, and see, when we talk about growing mobility, it involves a lot of things. I mean, let me say that Europe was going through a massive kind of around 1950s, and that actually gave rise to the standards of living, and obviously a demand for rise in wages came with it. So what these Western capitalists had little interaction with other cultures. Obviously when the English were in India, I need not say that, they did not interact with the culture as such. I mean, apart barring a few, obviously, who contributed to that culture at the same time. But anyway, most of them were not acquainted with what's going on in India. They were not interested in learning its history. They were not interested in talking about its culture or adopting its culture or learning from its culture. They were not interested. So in fact, they were unaffected by other cultures. They had no experience that there would be other cultures as well. With this movement, what started to happen was the social fabric got disturbed. I mean, they didn't know how to cope with it. You know, there were people who were not like them. There were people who they considered to be aliens, you know, rather than, you know, part of the human race. You know, I mean, virtually they were like aliens coming from another planet. I mean, they were not like India, which is a multinational country, and I'm stressing on the word multinational, different in its historicity, with an imbibed appreciation of difference. That is important. See, what is important if you're going to move forward with any kind of cultural understanding, and that's going to come from my paper, is to actually start to respect differences. I disagree with most of the democratic, philosophers of democracy, okay, who basically suggest that there's going to be a kind of unification, let's bring everybody into a single umbrella kind of thing. No, you have to leave everybody to their own. You have to look at their differences, start to respect their differences. It's not a matter of accommodating. Once the differences are recognized, Professor Vora, what actually happens is, and you respect those differences, what actually happens is development. Development in the sense that you develop together with your differences. So India is a multicultural society in the mold, not in the mold of West. It is a country founded by more than one group. It is very different, I mean culture group. It is very different from the countries with different ethnicities coming together due to the free movement that has started. However, India has opted to be a liberal society, which I think is slightly upsetting, at least for me. Because what liberal society or what liberalism or liberal philosophy actually breeds on is pointing towards an enemy. And that is exactly what's going on in India at the moment. They've got an enemy within, and they've got an enemy without, and that without is identified with the within. That's the biggest tragedy. So they're justifying whatever atrocities they are the Muslims are going through by suggesting that they are Pakistanis or across the border, people from across the border. Cultural understanding is not only controversial, but it is highly conflictual. The reason for that it's a ground level thing. It's not something just simply academic. It is ground level where you actually get into this kind of understanding of culture. It's ground level, therefore it is conflictual. There are two dominant socio-political philosophical understandings of dealing with cultural groups. The individualists and the communitarians. Both the approaches start with the recognition of rights of cultural groups, and both the approaches pivot on the axis that liberal democracies are not adequately protecting the minority cultures or their ways of life. The difference between the two is that the former argues protection of minorities is only possible if there is protection of the rights of the individual. Whereas communitarians are basically talking about rights of the group as a whole. Okay, the individualists go through various kinds of, there's a huge argument, and the argument basically is that, look, I mean, if we have cultural groups, then cultural groups are recognized who actually do not pay attention to the individual rights. So therefore, they end up with things like they do not distribute what are known as liberal goods, such as gender equality, and they end up permitting polygamy, banning of abortion, etc. They contend that the main concern of these cultural groups this is the individualist, is primarily personal law, which includes marriage, divorce, property, inheritance, etc. The multiculturalist, post-colonialist, and feminist too insist that intercultural rights are not sufficient, and intra-cultural rights, towards which Professor Bora also pointed, are equally needed and necessary to protect the minority rights. The criticism is that these cultural groups have little concern for the private domestic sphere of its members. Obviously, this basically comes from the feminist criticism, which leads to cultural relativism. It is argued that if these minority groups engage in only intergroup relations, paying little heed to the intra-group issues, it will lead to little adjustment with the surrounding secular environment or secular culture. See, Professor Bora has also mentioned it, I'm mentioning it again. Basically, I mean, all cultural groups have their, what might be called their other. They have their own, let us say, slight spot where those who do not belong to the main cultural stream actually are put up there. So, and they have equal, they should have equal rights. So basically what happens is that communitarians argue that let these groups decide for themselves. Let these groups, the cultural groups, carry on. Let's leave them alone. That's basically what they are arguing. The idea of an entire culture having rights does not make any sense to the individualists, who remain firm and undeterred on their egalitarian difference blindness. Okay? They seem to be considering individuals as if they are not different to each other, but they are very different to each other. A woman is not just a woman, she is different from other women. She is not only different from men, but each woman is just different from another. Each man is different from another. The communitarians like Taylor critique individualism by pointing to the individualist's insistence on choice over identity for them, which ignores the cultural heritage intrinsic to the identity of a member of a cultural group. And this is important, identity of a member of a cultural group. Identity is not considered by individuals as a source of values, beliefs, and achievements of life. Habermas, in 1994, agreed with Taylor's claim that difference-blind liberalism, in fact, legitimizes not recognizing the cultural identity of people, and that this lack of recognition, and this I'm going to come to later with recognition and difference, in certain circumstances, constitute a deprivation of the individual. The argument critiques liberal political philosophy, philosophical understanding of cultural membership as a primary good, or on par with the basic liberties, equal opportunities, and also wealth. See, the cultural goods are very different from them. They're not just lumped up as kind of social goods. Okay, according to rules, they're social goods which need to be distributed in order to give everybody choice of their own life, etc., and respect and all that. Okay, the communitarians say that okay, we're going to leave all that to the group itself. Communitarians and other advocates of group rights, they say that okay, leave them alone, let them decide for themselves, give them the freedom. That's all we should be concerned ourselves with. However, Kymlicka, who's one of 20th century's foremost proponent of individualist conception of cultural rights and groups, argues that we cannot treat culture as a socially active agent and give cultural groups more importance than individuals. If we do that, we'll have to attribute to them qualities that can be attributed only to individuals. In other words, we start to suffer from anthropomorphism. The communitarians retort that Kymlicka is primarily insisting on establishing context of choice as important for individuals, but fails in realizing that a cultural background is needed to provide a rich source of values and beliefs that people must draw on in defining their goals in life. The intense arguments between the two positions are well summed up by Mackenzie, who says navigating the choppy seas around the cultural archipelago of liberal norms has led to many examples of innovating and challenging political philosophy. The feminist Oken argues that the construction of a shared form of women's oppression is to obscure, colonize, and distort the experiences of women, ignoring differences in their contexts. Obviously, an Indian woman is suffering something entirely different from what a British woman might, or a European woman might, or an American woman might. Okay, the later day feminists in French tradition argue that their being the other gives them a chance to explore radically new ways of being in the world. If we approach our own and other cultures with an openness to exchanging insights, we will, according to Taylor, find a new basis for criticism, not just of other cultures, but also of our own. We need to criticize our own culture as well. We should not take our culture to be given for something that cannot be, virtually it is different, that difference cannot be taken away from it. The recognition of the need to engage with others with the intent to fuse our cultural horizons is a step, according to Taylor, for a liberal conversation with others that may respond to the demands of contemporary identity politics. A politics of recognition, a notion picked up from Hegel but contemporized by Taylor, is very distinct from liberalism asserting rights-based format. It is contended that a politics of recognition is a socio-political requirement which underscores that identity established through a conversation, a source of social recognition, a fundamental human need. It demands that democratic states not only guarantee equal rights, but also validate the distinct cultural, gender, or social identities of minority groups, moving beyond mere tolerance. A politics of recognition protects the integrity of the individual in real situations where identity of an individual is formed is a solution worth exploring to formulate a new approach to theory of rights. Sorry, I should not be saying so much on theory of rights with Professor Gurre's expert of the field, I'll hesitate. As pointed out by Habermas, for such an approach, no alternative model is required. So this is interesting, that no alternative model is required to avoid the faults of the individualist writing a system of rights dependent on some other normative viewpoint. The only requirement is a reliable bringing about of a system of rights. Reliable is the word. Now let's go back to Aristotle. Aristotle's Politics talks of the emerging of polis as most naturally assembled human association. Aristotle states that the essential pairing of male and female leading to the establishing of a household, which he says, rather unfortunately, is formed when men, he says that rather unfortunately, sorry, this is a quote, obviously. I'm going to, not even read it out again, okay? Is formed when men rule over women and slaves. He treats women and slaves as equals, basically. That emerges to come down to the villages, forming of villages that emerge as sons and grandsons set up their own households, and in the end, the final association formed of several villages in the polis. Accordingly, polis is the final association for Aristotle. It is an association that cannot be superseded and results from the culmination of human nature. He qualifies whatever is the end product of the coming into existence of an object, that is what we call its nature. The form that it finally assumes is the nature that it is moving with, which leads to his conclusion that man is by nature a political animal. These claims have for centuries been the ground of political philosophy prioritizing identity. There are now churnings to root political philosophy in privileging difference and abandon notion of identity. A socio-political philosophical conversation has already started with the radical shift by relating it to pure difference, a term that keeps itself away from foundational claims about human identity. Deleuze labels it as transcendental empiricism for the benefit of philosophy students. Okay, since working within the empirical conditions, it gives rise to new experiences, removing sameness from the discourse. The politics of difference in notion originated by feminist Young obviously has at its basis a respect for differences, with support from the thesis that no two events can be the same, and therefore each happening needs a distinct philosophical approach. The theorists of politics of difference feel each political event requires to innovate concepts directed to understand the particular political event and effect a conceptual framework directly applicable to the particular event. So the feminist political philosophy will not seek to understand the idea of woman by assuming that a woman must be the same as a man or other woman. So the relationships are so constructed either in an event or an analysis of blown-up theory will be located where it would be necessary to bring the identity of individuals in question. The question that arises with regard to such an approach to cultural understanding is, and this is the criticism against this approach, is whether it will be a way of doing socio-political philosophy. The apprehension that are raised is that it may dissolve into a merely a descriptive exercise of particular political events without in any way linking them together. Habermas insists on suggesting that the ideal of communicative interaction is, Professor Intel, especially for you, mentioning him and quoting him, the slogan is that Habermas insists on suggesting that the ideal of communicative interaction is precisely that which enables differences to flourish. See, that is the only significant language that we can talk about, according to Habermas. The slogan is that the politics of identity created the symbol of Robinson Crusoe. A lone man on a secluded desert island has to end, and with it will end the politics of identity. And that the impact of Deleuze, Hart and Negri, in the year 2000, pointed out that the conceptual framework of the imperial age is now redundant and replaced by what some might call new empire, a new global political order and administrative auspices, with a promise to incorporate all identities, differentiating these to minimize conflict with the multitude. The multitude is a term that is an alternative, and the best parts may function as witnesses, as transitory anti-capitalist movement, or maybe small movements on the campus, which Professor Gorey had to maintain somehow and calm down. Yes. So these are small uprisings. See, the huge uprisings that used to be there, they set, like, for example, Sartre used to lead, a procession of maybe something like 15 lakh, 20 lakh people following. That kind of thing has just simply died out. Small groups which pop up a little bit, then calm down, and they retreat. However, now in the year 2026, we know better. For we are in a position to clearly see the approach of this new world order that Hart and Negri talk about being the same. It is old wine in a well-anointed new bottle. That's the only difference. The gap between the dominated and the dominant is increasing. The dominated, the number is increasing hugely. The dominating is reducing. That is what is otherwise known as centralization of capital, and that's exactly what's going on. That centralization of capital started with new liberal political philosophy and political field. The desired change can only come through with completely different approaches, such as the centering of the notion of politics of recognition and politics of difference. See, politics of recognition and politics of difference have to go together, because if you do not recognize difference, then the question of difference does not arise. So the two have to be combined up. How they will be done, I can't say at the moment. Okay, and Habermas says, undistorted by money or power, which addresses and help genuine cultural understanding and bring about democratic social integration, where the relationship between identity and difference can flourish in many different ways. And this is what we want. Social political philosophy is not just thought, but it's also an agent of it. Political philosophy is a brilliant combination of theory and praxis with its conversation. This conversation flushes on radical readings of new ideas, opening up new grounds with little attempt to structure. Mackenzie rightly points out that this is not only because new ideas respond to new times, but more fundamentally because genuinely new ideas embody a critique of identity. The same old habits of thought that will always speak to, or our fundamental desires for difference itself. In this sense, it is on difference and that the conversation of political philosophy thrives. It has to be realized that the politics of difference cannot be without politics. I've already said that. Okay, I can move on. Okay, the conversation is a term that I prefer over the term dialogue. So, if you don't mind, I'm going to carry on using conversation to replace it. But I mean, somewhere or the other, just to be true to the topic, I'll also use the term dialogue. The human race at present stands at the crossroad, and this is the second part of my paper. The human race at present stands at the crossroad of perplexity, a moment of human freedom. We see an intellectual and economic outburst threatening to reduce the hegemonic West, a crisis of civilizations. Maybe an end in sight for an era, but distant in coming. There's an unprecedented cynicism of the political, reflected by the prevailing disenchantment exhibited through periodic outbursts of public agitations. Okay, I think I can miss all that. Let's go. See, I mean, globalization and liberalization are misnomers. Misnomers in that okay, that actually gets the border porous as far as the financial and transaction and import and export of goods is otherwise it's the same thing. There's absolutely no difference between the two. So it is a misnomer. It is a neoliberal ascendancy is the claim of withering away of borders, okay? And that is what they say, and so you can go in for free trade and all that, okay? I'll move further on. The antagonisms have grown enormously to the extent of forcing the organizing of interfaith dialogue. See, it is because of that antagonism that we are actually forced into organizing such a thing. I'll come to its history and then maybe things will be clearer. The interfaith dialogue, while claiming an intent of accommodating the either is exclusionary. That is my claim. The antinomy embedded in it, firstly, it established a dialogue only among the religious, excluding a large section of global society comprising of non-religious population. We'll leave this issue for later discussion on it. Okay. Secondly, most probably unwittingly, faith in its strict sense, primarily signifies Semitic religions, which are three in number: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. These are religions that have faith. Hinduism does not work on faith. Am I right, sir? Okay. So, I mean, Buddhism doesn't work on faith. Yes, Dr. Budin, yeah. Jainism doesn't work on faith. So, when we're talking about interfaith dialogue, what are we talking about? What are we going to have a dialogue on? These three religions, and that's it. That's the end. Okay, we can expand the boundary a little bit and say interreligious dialogue. Okay, we can, but I'll come to that a little later. Okay, I mean, see, basically, interfaith dialogue smells of Orientalism. It's a kind of condemning, okay, of other religions as such, world religions at that. Okay. Let me clarify that I'm not decrying the endeavor to continue engaging, only that it should be all-inclusive, since only such engagement can teach us to respect differences and move away from an effort to homogenize and hegemonize both. I mean, there's an continuous effort to homogenize. I mean, that's what Hinduism is trying to do. Let's have nobody else, apart from those who actually think that Sarvaka is the greatest, thing that could have happened to this world. My contention is that we can overcome a part of the antinomy by adopting interreligious. I've already said that. Okay, let's move on further, because It's been a long time. The historical origin and development of the notion of interfaith is interesting. I'm just going to read that out. The first occurrence of the term interfaith is to be found sometime in 1932, the year that Huxley's dystopia, Brave New World, saw the light of the day. The year that saw Gandhi arrested by the British. The year of surge of fascism with the fascist coup in the Memel property, now Lithuania. The rise of Adolf Hitler. The year that saw high unemployment. I mean, you can connect up why all this is happening. Why are we talking about interfaith? The graph of the use of the term shows a rise till 1960, when there is a nosedive decline till 1979. The decades of, this decline, till 1979. The decades of rise in employment, the spread of liberal and socialist thought, the coming of age of secularization. However, interestingly, but not surprising, the use of the term starts to rise again and is still rising. And that happened primarily because petrol was nationalized. That created a huge economic and financial upheaval in the West. Okay? It has gone up by 300%. The use has actually gone up by 300%, and we are contributing to it. Dr. Ahmad, for your consideration. Okay, so 300%, maybe we add 1%. All right, anyway, it's 300% since 1979, when the global trend towards neoliberal policies started. The efforts to put into motion the notion of globalization and liberalization started to gain strength, the full impact of oil nationalization. The event of September 11, 2001 has added impetus to the use and utility of the term interfaith, as pretends to strike at the heart of religious conflicts, Huntington's clash of civilizations, and resolve them through dialogue. History apart, the use of interfaith has some serious philosophical drawbacks, which helps in concluding that interfaith and its use is either a covert political project or suffers from being an extremely limited project. I will take up as sample two leading philosophers in the 20th century, with Dreda and Habermas, who disagreed with each other, especially with regard to methodology emanating from an approach inherited from the antiquities of choice between dialectics and rhetoric. However, before doing that, we must first interrogate whether Hinduism, this and that, is faith or not. Okay, obviously we are going to say no. Habermas says that there should be plurality of voices while retaining the backdrop of reason. Plurality of voices while retaining the backdrop of reason. He points out the philosophically enlightened self-understanding of modernity stands in a peculiar dialectical relationship to the theological self-understanding of the major world religions, which intrude into this modernity as the most awkward element from the past. The intrusion is not to be condemned, but placed in a perspective of debate, dialogue, and understanding. Dreda points out, one cannot force someone to speak or listen. Obviously, you can't do, especially listen. Maybe you can force somebody to speak, but listen is difficult. And listen is not just hearing, it's much more than that, as Professor Nazia would support me on this. This is where the question of faith returns. According to Dreda, there's a difference between religion and faith. Faith is the condition of social relations, intersubjectivity, the commonality, enabling addressing the other. In addressing a huge space opens up for both differences and commonality, and empathy and compassion for the other. Dreda insists, I do not see what the other has in mind or whether the other wants to deceive me, so I have to trust the other. That is faith. The ordinary use of the word faith is that I do not know, but because I know you, therefore I trust and therefore I have faith in what you're saying and your claims. If we understand faith purely as a theological notion, then there's no possibility of an opening required for inclusion. In fact, it spells a closure. In these philosophical terms, faith in these philosophical terms is nobody's monopoly, and this is where I would like all the philosophy people to say, and because it's nobody's monopoly. This is philosophy. When we do not allow any monopoly of any group or individual, that's where philosophy actually starts, that domain of philosophy. Faith is shared meaning. Faith, in other words, cannot be confined to religious discourse. Faith then may firstly be classified as a feature of communality, and one that is a particularity, not a metaphysical notion, confining it to religion. The ordinary common meaning of faith and the meaning in metaphysics of religion are easily discernible. The former forms the backbone of social intersubjectivity. Our main concern is to have cultural understanding and embracing diversity. The latter, the religious subjectivity, the urgency in differentiating the two must be recognized. Secondly, as I mentioned earlier, interfaith has an exclusionary tone. I'm not the only one insisting on this. The website of Archdiocese of Chicago, under the heading, "What is the difference between ecumenical and interreligious relations?" It defines the term interfaith as concerned with relations of members of the Abrahamic religions. This is how he defines it. Obviously, he also belongs to one. He's a Christian. It goes on to enumerate interreligious as relation with other religions. Such religious is a relation with other religions such as Hinduism and Buddhism. Of the world religions, it is mostly to the Abrahamic tradition that the term faith is applied. However, after the European Enlightenment and its accompanying narrative of modernity, the face of the secular state started to appear on the European scene. I think I give that all a miss, because it's just taking a clue. I think that the problematic that we have can be constructed as a difference between belongingness and exclusiveness. Like in Tagore's notion of cosmopolitanism, and I bring that in especially so that nobody actually feels alienated from this notion that I'm trying to enumerate. See, cosmopolitanism, as far as Tagore is concerned, is a world which should be moving in a particular direction, and we are all part of it. But then Tagore goes on to classify it. He says that this is the initial response. In a similar fashion, one's religion is the initial response, but keeping in mind all the time or emanating from an interreligious understanding to be developed or developing or evolved or evolving. Right? What he's basically saying is that religion, cosmopolitanism does not ignore your home. It does not ignore your city. It does not ignore your district. He's saying that these are circles. So we can start off with my home, go further up. But then all this time, we have to keep the notion of cosmopolitanism in our mind so that we are working in that particular direction. This is something similar to what you said as well. Okay. Now, anyway, the technological developments resulting in quick travel, greater mobility is actually what brought about this kind of issue. Okay, and this issue of having multiple cultures and cultural understanding was attempted in various ways to actually somehow, let's say, refine it and bring it to some kind of a consensus. There's a need to provide a framework to turn the antinomy into fruitful exchanges among competing identities, religious, ethnic, etc. The dialogical individual or collectivity should feel the perpetual need to converse with each other rather than speaking about each other. Converse with each other rather than speaking about other. Okay? Interreligious understanding, we are very much in the habit, and we enjoy it much more about speaking of the other. Or, speaking about the other. We are far more interested in that. We do it every day. पड़ोस में क्या हो रहा है? वो गई थी निकल के, उसके बाल आज ठीक नहीं बने हुए थे, कुछ प्रॉब्लम है. All these kind of things. Okay. Anyway. Exactly. Collectivity and should feel perpetual need to converse with each other rather than speaking with each other. Interreligious understanding is a possibility of post-secular mode where religion is given entry to public discursive discourse. Now, this is a notion that's coming through from radical proponents of democracy like Laclau and Mauve. Okay, interreligious understanding is the possibility of post-secular mode where religion is given entry to public discursive discourse, opening up an equal space for both commonality and, and difference to discover the other and each other. We have to move away from antagonistic to agonistic relations. Okay, what is agonistic? It is something which allows you the differences. So we should allow those differences and respect those differences. That is what is known as, that is like one of the concepts that is used for establishing radical democracy. To engage in such conversation, one requires that people speak, and just as importantly, they listen. Khatami, former Iranian president, voiced, understanding results from talking and listening, and the two functions of talking and listening are most important physical, psychological, and spiritual activity of a human being. He lays a special stress on that. Understanding is an encounter across cultures, religions, and civilizations where one listens to the other, opens up, gets sensitive, even exposed to others' ideas with a slight apprehension that might even be converted to it. Okay, and obviously that's something that we should actually avoid. Okay, to the other perspective, and above all, worries. Through understanding, by conversing with the other, there is the discovery of the other. Faith, for that matter, religion is an exclusionary perspective. Ashok Vora also agrees with me on that. A foundational thesis, and therefore brings in the notion of identity. So it's this very notion of identity which is playing havoc in the present world, where cultural understanding leads to two options, either in terms of individuals or groups. However, both are based on the notion of identity. It might be identity of the group, or it might be the identity of the individual. The difference being a variation in the approach. But nevertheless, either individual identity or group identity is the basic issue. The notions translate themselves into the liberal, individualist, or communitarian approach to rights. While both deal with rights, the first emphasizes the individual's right of choice, with the second laying stress on group rights. Foucauldian thesis on what constitutes the nature of power shapes our sense of self. Habermas feels if we accept the argument that Foucault is presenting, then the promise of rationally justifiable consensus seems not only unlikely in practice but impossible in principle. That's what he's saying. He's saying that it is impossible in principle, despite it being unresolvable. But despite it being unresolvable, we should nevertheless keep making that effort into trying to get into cultural understanding and intercultural adjustments. However, it can continue to develop through socio-political, philosophical critiquing to achieve post-secular society. Post-secular society is also a term given by Habermas. Sorry that he is not with us anymore. Society by sourcing from politics of recognition and politics of difference to displace the politics of identity and invent a methodology and a terminology to suit itself. That's my conclusion. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Professor Tariq Islam Saab, for this keynote address. Your insights have certainly added depth to our understanding of the theme and will greatly inspire the discussion that follow. Our chief guest is present among us now. We, the Department of Philosophy, AMU Aligarh, wholeheartedly welcome him to this event. I would humbly request Dr. Amir Riaz, the Chairperson, Department of Philosophy, to kindly felicitate our Honorable Chief Guest, Professor Muhammad Gulrez Saab, the former Vice Chancellor of Aligarh Muslim University, with a shawl and a memento as a mark of appreciation. Thank you so much, Dr. Amirya Saab. Now, I would humbly request Professor T.N. Satishan, our respected Dean, Faculty of Arts, to kindly come for his address as a guest of honor.
Before reading the address of the Dean Sahab, I again welcome Professor Muhammad Gulrez Sahab, former Vice Chancellor. Due to his busy schedule, he was late, but he promised me that I'll definitely join you. So thank you so much for that, sir. Professor G.S. Hashmi sir has joined us late, so I also welcome Professor Tawqir Saab is here. Some faculty member from other department, Professor Musawir Saab is there on the back. Back. Professor Zia Saab is here, so I welcome them all. So we know that Dean Saab is not well, so we really pray for his speedy recovery, and we wish that he gets well soon. His address is with me. Just I have to read it. Respected Professor Muhammad Gulrez, former Vice Chancellor and President of Inaugural Session, distinguished keynote speaker Professor Ashok Vora, my esteemed colleague and dear friend Professor Tariq Islam, Dr. Amir Riaz, Chairperson, Department of Philosophy, distinguished guests, respected colleagues, delegates, faculty members, and dear students. It is both a privilege and profound responsibility to stand before you today as the Dean and the guest of honor at this important national seminar on embracing diversity, interfaith dialogue, and cultural understanding. At the outset, I extend my sincere appreciation to the Department of Philosophy for organizing this timely and intellectually enriching gathering. The presence of eminent scholars and thoughtful participants reflect the seriousness with which we approach one of the most pressing concerns of our time, the need for harmony amidst diversity. India, as we all know, is not merely a nation, it is a living civilization. It is a confluence of religion, language, cultures, and the philosophical traditions. This plurality is not incidental, it is foundational. The strength of India lies in its ability to accommodate, absorb, and celebrate diversity. However, such diversity also demands conscious effort, understanding, and dialogue. Diversity is a fundamental fact of human existence. It represents a rich tapestry woven from multiple faiths, cultures, and traditions. Each thread contributes to the beauty and resilience of the whole. To embrace diversity is not merely to tolerate differences, but to recognize them as the source of strength and enrichment. A society that values diversity fosters inclusivity, creativity, and peace. In this context, interfaith dialogue assumes immense significance. Dialogue does not aim at homogenization or ensure of identities. Rather, it is a process of mutual learning and respect. It enables individuals and communities to engage with one another in a spirit of openness, empathy, and intellectual humility. As highlighted in the insightful keynote address on theophobia, humanism, and Hindutva by Professor Ashok Vora, and the stimulating reflections on culture and antinomy of interfaith dialogue, Professor Tariq Islam, dialogue must confront complexities without losing sight of shared human values. Such engagements has far-reaching implications. It helps in combating intolerance, prejudice, and misunderstanding. It creates space for collaboration on common human concerns, be it environmental sustainability, social justice, and ethical living. When communities come together in dialogue, they build bridges of trust and solidarity that strengthen the very fabric of society. Interfaith understanding is not confined to academic discussions alone, it must permeate everyday life. Educational institutions like ours
play a pivotal role in cultivating this ethos. Through seminars, discussions, and lived interactions, we can nurture a generation that value dialogue over division and understanding over conflict. True dialogue happens when individuals meet not as representative of rigid identities but as fellow human beings. We must also acknowledge that dialogue is not without challenges. Differences in beliefs, historical experiences, and social realities can create tensions. However, the purpose of dialogue is not to eliminate differences but to transcend divisions. It calls for patience, sincerity, and a commitment to a shared future grounded in mutual respect. I am confident that the deliberations over these 2 days will be intellectually stimulating and socially meaningful. The exchange of ideas, perspectives, and experiences will undoubtedly deepen understanding of interfaith and cultural dynamics. Such engagements are essential in shaping a more inclusive and harmonious society. Let us leave this seminar not only with new insights, but with renewed commitments to uphold the values of dialogue, respect, and coexistence in our personal and professional lives. Thank you so much. That is from Professor T. N. Satishan, Dean Faculty of Arts.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Amir Riaz Sahab, for this address on behalf of the Dean Faculty of Arts, AMU Aligarh. And now, I would humbly request our chief guest, Professor Mohammad Gulrez Sahab, to kindly come for his presidential remarks. But before inviting him, I would like to share a few things about him. Professor Mohammad Gulrez Sahab is an international relations and global governance expert. He has served as Pro-Vice Chancellor and Vice Chancellor of Aligarh Muslim University. He has also served as Dean Faculty of International Studies. He has many national and international academic repute. He has participated in seminars and workshops in United States, Iran, Libya, South Africa, and many other countries. Professor Gulrez has also been selected in the list of 100 notable alumni of Aligarh Muslim University by the EDU rank for the year 2022. His area of specialization is conflict resolution, ethnic conflicts, civil society, and poverty alleviation. I would humbly request Professor Gulrez Sahab to kindly deliver his presidential remarks.
Professor Ashok Vora, Dean Faculty of Arts, Professor Tariq Islam, Dr. Amir Riaz, learned faculty members, my dear students. I'm sorry that I missed the first part as I was in some other seminar and I promised Dr. Tariq that Amir that I will join in an hour or so. So I'm really sorry that I could not follow what Professor Ashok Vora was telling me. But nonetheless, Professor Tariq Islam time and again referred to Professor Vora and highlighted the key points of his thematic speech which he gave this morning. Interfaith dialogue and cultural understanding. I'm wondering that, when I was reading about Huntington, clash of civilization and remaking of the world order. After the end of the Cold War, starting from 1991, a soldier turned philosopher, Huntington, he wrote an article in Foreign Affairs magazine, Cultural Civilization, Clash of Civilization and Remaking of the World Order in 1993. And then it got currency and it converted into a book. Precisely what he says that after the demise of Soviet Union, the former USSR, there would not be the end of wars because the Cold War is ended, but the conflicts would be now on the basis of culture. Right now, what we are witnessing is Iran is a cultural society. It's not a mercenary culture. India is a civilizational state. Iran is a civilizational state. Egypt is a civilizational state. Whereas America is a mercenary culture. Mercenary culture in the sense that people are migrating to that land in search of a green pastures. They are going there for search of a job. They do not have their own rich culture, which Americans want to tell that, make the America strong again. What kind of a strong, you never had any culture previous to that, and you are teaching lessons to other. As Professor Tariq Islam was telling, that it is about culture. And in case, as a student of international studies, we try to understand, and I would request the student of philosophy that you also study Johann Galtung, the theory of conflict transformation. And he says that there are three kind of violence. There is a direct violence when two groups are fighting, two peoples are fighting. Violence in the family, violence at the border. When the violence is the border is there is involving a land. Like Palestine, people are fighting against the state, Israel. Or there are indirect conflict. Indirect conflict are when there is a conflict based on identity, based on culture, based on ethnicity, based on your being self. So what Johann Galtung is telling, that direct violence, structural violence, and cultural violence. Structural violence, he says that there are, caste is there, religion is there, your basic foundational aspects are there. And cultural violence is that once you are so embedded in these very structural formation, you don't understand, you become blindfolded. And then there is no difference between what is good or bad. And then you are blindfolding as to what is happening. Sometimes you see people are killing or beating somebody on the street. Women are being dragged in the house. You say, ये तो रोज का वाकया है, इसमें हमें क्या परेशान होना? This means that, you are blindfolded. This is cultural violence where you are accepting all these things happening in the societies as a cultural norm. And this is very problematic. So, talking about religious interfaith, now what we are doing right now, we are establishing departments of comparative religion. Now, this is problematic. Comparative religion means that you are comparing one religion with that of another religion. And this means that you are giving more position to one religion as compared to other religion. I think there should not be any such denomination of departments, comparative. Religious studies can be there. So I think these things are complicated within their structure itself. I was, also reading, listening to Tariq Islam, where he was telling that, you go to West. What is happening now? The Indian diaspora, which has visited, I think 2 generations, 3 generations back, the first generation watch the diaspora which is visiting, our children when they are visiting, they are first generation. Now they are going for job, seeking job. But second and third generation diaspora is that they have imbibed, they have very much inclined within the system. Their education is in the Western model or European model or American model. They have got sufficient saving back at home. Now what they are doing, they are trying to realize their culture, reviving their culture. Now what is happening in these, they are not respecting the basic parameters of the society where they are living in. Earlier, they were compromising because they were going for job seeking. Now their children are at par with the Europeans, with the Americans, and they want to realize their own culture. And this is what sometimes we call cultural hazards. Now, the more we are becoming civilized, the more retrogressive, or cultural backward we are becoming. This is what is happening. I was talking to some Afghani friends, philosopher. They were telling what is happening, that seeing the Indian soap operas which are coming, Nagin. I was for 1 year in Sri Lanka on the India chair, ICCR chair. He was telling me there that the soap opera Nagin which is coming on television is the most popular in Sri Lanka. Now, what the ladies are doing, they are imbibing what is happening inside. The best designed clothes Indian women are wearing, and they are conspiring with each other in the family. So this is what is a reflection. This is the civilization hazards. I think the fundamental duty, one of the fundamental duty of Indian Constitution is that develop scientific thinking. What is required at this stage, especially expected from the university students, boys and girls both, that we should have a rational thinking. We should develop accommodation against each other. The discussion on religions will come at a very later stage. First, we should try to become a good human being. This is the lesson of the day, I think. This is what our school children should be learned, that first lesson. That is the lesson of the day. And I think that, that this kind of a discussion which are taking place, like in the very 13th century, the Europeans, make a separation between church and the religion, render into the Caesar what is up to Caesar and God what is up to God. Let the power be decided of what used to be the king, or what the power belongs to individual. I think we also have to think on these lines. Where our right starts, the duty of other also ends, and the vice versa. We should be very accommodative. Bernard Shaw says that I am saying I may be wrong, and this very point civilization begins. I think this is the crux. There is a very popular saying in Africa, when I was in Africa, I learned, it says, Abantu, I am because we are. Now, this says so many things. I am because we are. This is Abantu in African Swahili language. This means accommodation, resilience, and to see what others and how others are living. The right kind of education should be imparted in different universities. Our teachers should also have this much of a responsibility, that once you are getting higher education, only 8% boys and girls are getting higher education in this country. It's a luxury. But once you are here, you should try to imbibe and develop those good habits. Then only the Department of Philosophy and other departments will be able to fulfill its mission, organizing these seminars. Otherwise, you are not there to listening, or sitting to listen. There are thousands of speeches available on internet, on interfaith dialogue. Enough is enough, I think unless you will change yourself, your family and your surroundings, nothing positive will come. With these words, I once again, thank you, congratulate Department of Philosophy for giving me this opportunity, and am thankful that I am here to share my thoughts with you. Thank you very much.
On behalf of everyone present here, I extend our sincere gratitude to our chief guest, Professor Gulreza, for the insightful and inspiring presidential remarks. Thank you, sir, for your presence to this event. Now I would like to call upon Dr. Salman Siddiqui, Assistant Professor and Coordinator of this seminar, to please come and deliver his vote of thanks.
Thank you, sir. Respected dignitaries on and off the dais, esteemed faculty members, distinguished guests, dear research scholars, students, and all those who have graced this occasion with their presence. As we come to the end of this intellectually enriching inaugural session, it is my privilege and honor to offer a sincere vote of thanks on behalf of Department of Philosophy, Aligarh Muslim University. First of all, I would like to express our heartfelt gratitude
to our chief guest, Professor Mohammad Gulrez sir, former Vice Chancellor, Aligarh Muslim University. Sir, your address has provided valuable direction to this seminar and reminded us of the importance of dialogue and inclusiveness, and also deconstructing the idea of comparing religion, which has been a great source of strength to our department. We owe a special debt of gratitude to our keynote speaker, Professor Ashok Vora sir, former head Department of Philosophy, University of Delhi. Sir, your lecture on theophobia, Hinduism, and Hindutva opened the seminar with intellectual boldness and scholarly clarity. You have given us much to think about, debate, and carry forward. We extend our heartfelt thanks to our second keynote speaker, Professor Tariq Islam sir, Chairperson Department of Philosophy, Aligarh Muslim University. Sir, your address on culture and antinomy of interfaith dialogue brought philosophical depth to the very heart of our theme. We are grateful for the wisdom you so generously shared with us. We are delighted to welcome and thank the distinguished scholars who have joined us today as a special guest, Dr. Upendra Kumar sir, Associate Professor, Department of Philosophy and Religion, Banaras Hindu University. Sir, your presence reflects the bonds of scholarly friendship that transcend institutional boundaries, and we are honored to have them with us. Honored to have you with us. We also acknowledge with great warmth the presence of other distinguished guests and dignitaries from within and outside the university. A word of thanks to our chairperson, Dr. Amir Riaz sir, whose tireless vision and dedicated leadership have made this seminar possible, from its conceptualization to its execution. The department is fortunate to have in him a leader who leads not merely by authority but by example. We are also honored by the gracious presence of his wife and warmly welcome her to the gathering. Thanks are also due to our former chairperson, Dr. Aqil Ahmad sir, for his valuable guidance throughout. I would like to extend my sincere thanks to all respected faculty members of the department, Dr. Zaid Ahmad sir, Dr. Mohammad Azad, Hina Mushtaq, Dr. Mahin Raza. I would also like to extend my sincere thanks to all former and present deans, former and present chairpersons, faculty members, retired faculty members. Your presence has made this presence truly meaningful. And I would like to thank Professor Nazia ma'am, Rubina ma'am, and all faculty members from Women's College. We thank the members of organizing committee, Dr. Bodhendra Kumar, coordinator, and Dr. Shahidul Haq, organizing secretary. They have been the tireless architect of this seminar, working day and night to turn a complex vision into reality. The department owes a profound debt of gratitude to their industrious spirit and self-dedication. Our farthest thanks to all the participants who have traveled from near and far, both in person and online, to be a part of this conversation. You are the reason this seminar exists. And finally, I would like to especially acknowledge our dedicated research scholars and students, Rubina Sultana, Arooj, Alia, Ashi, Zara. You are your collective efforts has been backbone of this seminar. I would also like to express our thanks to our Tarana team who are with us today. We deeply appreciate their presence. We are grateful to every member of the non-teaching staff of the Department of Philosophy and Faculty of Arts whose quiet but essential contribution made this arrangement possible. We hope that the conversation begin in this hall today will continue long after we leave it. Thank you all. We look forward to enriching days of learning.
Online it's online.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Salman Siddiqui, for your vote of thanks. Now it's time for University Tarana. I would request the Tarana team of Aligarh Muslim University to present the University Tarana. University Tarana will be followed by the national anthem.
मेरा चमन है मेरा चमन, मैं अपने चमन का बुलबुल। ये मेरा चमन है मेरा चमन, मैं अपने चमन का बुलबुल। सरशार निगाहे नरगिस वाबस्ते बेसुर सुंबुल। ये मेरा चमन, ये मेरा चमन, ये मेरा चमन है मेरा चमन, मैं अपने चमन का बुलबुल। जोता के हरम में रोशन है, वो शमा यहाँ भी जलती है। इस दश्त के गोशे गोशे से जूए हयात उबलती है। ये दश्त जुनू दीवानों का, ये बज़्म वफा परवानों की। ये दश्त जुनू दीवानों का, ये बज़्म वफा परवानों की। ये शहर तरब रुमानों का, ये खुद बड़ी अरमानों की। फितरत ने सिखाई है हमको उस्ताद यहाँ परवाज़ यहाँ। फितरत ने सिखाई है हमको उस्ताद यहाँ परवाज़ यहाँ। गाए हैं वफा के गीत यहाँ, छेड़ा है जुनू का साज यहाँ। गाए हैं वफा के गीत यहाँ, छेड़ा है जुनू का साज यहाँ। मेरा चमन है मेरा चमन, मैं अपने चमन का बुलबुल। इस बाज़्म में तेरे दीजिए, इस बाज़्म में सागर तोड़े हैं। इस बाज़्म में आग बुझाई, इस बाज़्म में दिल तक जोड़े हैं। हर शाम है शाम मिस्र यहाँ, हर शब है सभी शिराज़ यहाँ। हर शाम है शाम मिस्र यहाँ, हर शब है सभी शिराज़ यहाँ। मैं सारे जहां का सोज़ यहाँ, और सारे जहां का साज़ यहाँ। सर्रात का बोसा लेने को 100 बार झुका आकाश यहाँ। सर्रात का बोसा लेने को 100 बार झुका आकाश यहाँ खुद आँख से हमने देखी है, बातिल की शिकस्त खुद आँख से हमने देखी है, बातिल की शिकस्त मेरा चमन है मेरा चमन, मैं अपने चमन का बुलबुल, मेरा चमन ये मेरा चमन, ये मेरा चमन है मेरा चमन, मैं अपने चमन का बुलबुल। सारी जमा पर बरसेगा, हर सर्व समन पर बरसेगा, हर कष्ट गमन पर बरसेगा, खुद अपने चमन पर बरसेगा, गैरों के चमन पर बरसेगा, हर शहर तरफ पर गरजेगा, हर कसर तरफ पर गड़केगा, ये अब्र हमेशा बरसा है, ये अब्र हमेशा बरसा है, ये अब्र हमेशा बरसा है, ये हमेशा बरसेगा, बरसेगा बरसेगा बरसेगा। जय है भारत भाग्य विधाता, पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड़ विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंग, तब शुभ नामे जागे, तब शुभ आशीष मांगे, गाहे तब जय गाथा, जन गण मंगलदायक, जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता, जय हे जय हे जय हे, जय 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 हे।
Thank you so much, Tarana team. Now it's time for refreshment. All of you are requested to join that with us outside the launch. The first technical session of this seminar will start today at 3 p.m. at the Keynote.
गलती कुछ नहीं करी है मेरे को
कौन सी आवाज हारमोनियम की आवाज निकल रही है। मैंने शुरू पता नहीं मैंने शुरू किया पीछे अभी जो उन्होंने बोला लेकिन
अरे वो तबला गलत है। Thanks everyone for joining us. Sir.